Good evening, everyone. I know I may not be sort of the commentator that you may or may not be expecting today, but I've been asked to cover it for GFRL tonight, so that's what I am doing. We're at round 5 of season 7 at Silverstone, and we have Edwin LFC, first driver, out on the circuit. It's raining, although it's not raining particularly much, so this could well be a very interesting session. Because it's raining, but everyone, pretty much everyone, has gone out on the slicks on the circuit. And I'm going to apologise in advance in case I do end up saying anyone's names wrong, because I do not know particularly many people in this league. But NFC is just taking us down onto the Wellington Straight for the first time, and these conditions do not look to be the most enjoyable for the drivers out on the circuit, because it's wet, but it's inters. Oh, it's wet, but they're on slicks. Honestly, could be very, very treacherous conditions out onto the circuit. He's heading down the old pit straight in towards Copse Corner, and then the famous complex of Maggots and Beckett's. You can see how much he's just sliding. There's a Mercedes that's gone off right behind him, got into the wall through Copse. That shows the conditions. I think he's got damage to his... And yes, he does. Which is not ideal at all. They're heading in towards Stowe Corner now, the right-hander in the final sector. Just, again, struggling so much to just keep it in a straight line. You can see how difficult these conditions are, and it's probably right on the line between intermediates and slicks. So he heads up the line, and it's a 1:37.5 to be the first run of the session. Behind him goes into beating quite a significant margin with a 1:36.9. Behind them is Mercedes de Foles, who did hit the wall and is coming in towards the pit lane. And name redacted coming through that final sector, the final chicane in towards the last corner of Club, and just beginning their first run of the session. So I'm still trying to set some things up, because first time doing it. Binky goes up into P2 with a 1:37.0, not far off that P1 time at all. Then we've got two drivers in very close proximity as Zadko goes into P1 with a 36.4, despite practically pushing the McLaren across the line of Phantom Fox, and Duyadok going P1 with a 35.9. So these times are beginning to tumble, as it does seem to be possibly slightly lifting up with the rain. MBM coming up to the line. It is then intermediate conditions at the moment on the circuit. So he does a 1:35.0 to go fastest by 9/10 of a second. Foz retired as well, going in the pit lane. So I'm not quite sure why they've done that, but they're not going to be setting a time in qualifying. Him redacted can only manage a 1:40.3 in the Williams, which is not quite the greatest of lap times. They're quite far behind the rest of the drivers. 5 seconds off that P1 time. But I'm sure there's room for improvement, just trying to learn the conditions at this stage. I imagine for most of the drivers. P1XX going through that middle sector through Maggotts and Beckett's into Chapel and onto the Hangar Straight with a 109.4 in those first 2 sectors. It's interesting how different these conditions are at the moment and how much they'll change throughout the rest of the session, because at the moment it definitely seems to be intermediate conditions, but later on will it become slick? Honestly, it might even come full wet with the way that this game can be at times. Little drift through the end of the Vale Chicane as he heads up to the line, and it's P2 with a 135.6, despite what seemed to be quite a scruffy lap, which may mean it is still firmly intermediate conditions. So next car up to the line, improves by half a second, goes up into P5. Then Name Redacted is down on their time through the middle sector, and they're going to come into the pit lane. No, right. Bit of indecisiveness there, I think. They're trying to come into the pit lane. Then Phantom Fox is heading through Cop's Corner at the moment in the McLaren, trying to get their first lap time onto the board, taking us through Beckett's and then to the right of Chapel. It's not taking too much risk with these conditions. At least not at the moment. Heading to the right of Stowe, gonna get back on the power. And under braking for the Vale Chicane, just needs to keep this one going in a straight line, and then we can assess how that lap has been. A lot more drivers choosing to come out now onto the intermediate tyres, having seen how much fast they are. Phantom Fox goes up into P7 with a 136.8. Oh, it's a drift there through the first corner, just trying to get the car under control. Already finished the lap, but still struggling in these conditions. It just shows how tight it is with the conditions, how much of a knife edge you have to be on to get the car through these corners at any form of speed. As almost all of these drivers are on what seems to be the wrong tyre compound. Prix heading through that final chicane, and he's going to start his second run of qualifying, but it's still on those slick tyres on the soft compound. Oh no, he's not going to set the times. He's gone right the way off the road through that first sector, and yeah, it just shows how difficult these conditions are at the moment. Just going off in quite an odd place, really, to be making a mistake. Yeah, but more and more drivers are choosing to go out onto the track on the soft. But interestingly, MDM, who's currently got the fastest time, which he's set on the intermediates, has decided that now it's time for the soft compound, as Edwin goes up into P2 with a 135.0 on the intermediate tyres to prove that they still are competitive. But MDM seems to think they're not the fastest anymore, which is certainly interesting. He's done through Chapel, yet to begin a time, but we'll have yet to begin his next lap, but has plenty of time to do so. As Woods in the Red Bull has gone 3.8 seconds faster now that he's on that intermediate compound. And there's still going to be more time to be found in that lap. It will take about 4.2 seconds if he wants to go to P1, but through that Vale Chicane, has got it stopped pretty neatly. And the Red Bull driver is going to get on the power and head up to the line. And does go P1 by quite a margin as well, 1.4 seconds. So there is a lot of time in this circuit if the drivers can find it. Zulianic in the Kicksalver is also now heading in towards that final chicane, and he's going to hope that he finds just as much time as MS Woods did just a few seconds ago, as he also heads to the final corner of Club and up to the line. He goes fastest by 0.004 of a second, but there is certainly a lot of track improvement at this stage of qualifying. Phantom Fox choosing to come into the pit lane, not wanting to stay on those slick tyres. Then BS Gabri coming around the final corner, still on the slicks, but still goes into P5 with a 135.3. And same with name redacted around the final corner. Still on the slick tyres, a lot of drivers are deciding that it's not worth going for the intermediates, despite the clear pace difference that they seem to have, because MVM is down on his time as well. He's 1.4 seconds off P1, but he's down on it when he tried to go back out on the slick tyres. So, yeah, it's pretty evident at this stage that the intermediate tyre is the one to be on. It's Blackberry heading around the final corner, 2 seconds up on his personal best, goes into P6, but that's the best that he can manage on those soft tyres. Possibly there will be a swing in the not too distant future, but certainly at the moment it appears that the Inters are the tyre you want. So yeah, look, it's coming into the pit lane, currently P1, but it's only by 4/1000ths of a second. They get going quite slowly, and or possibly so maybe it was someone else bringing out those yellow flags through the final sector. He still is going to come up towards the line, and he goes fastest with 133.5, improving by over 2 seconds to get his Ferrari up to P1. A lot of drivers are deciding that they don't want to be on that soft tyre anymore, and looking at the conditions, I don't blame them. Tiak's going to come round to final corner in the Alpine, goes up the line, it's a 2.6 second improvement, and goes into P4, so the top 5 drivers, or possibly even top 6, all set their... Yeah, so the top 6 drivers all set their laps on the intermediate compound. And it just shows what the conditions are like at this stage. Zeki was only 5,000ths down, but he invalidated the time through Stowe, getting... Oh, not through Stowe, sorry, through Cops. Oh, dearie me, that's... It's quite impressive that he kept that one in a straight line, to be fair. Even if it required cutting an entire corner or two. Edwin LFC as well is coming out to start what is likely the final run of the set. No, he's coming straight back into the pit lane, which is interesting because he's on his outlap, but he's going to come straight back in again. And so Phantom Fox is also going to come in. I'm curious as to why he came straight back in on his in-lap. Or on his out-lap, sorry. Is he gonna go for the slicks instead? Surely not, right? So, the drivers are all pretty much choosing to come back out on the Inters. P1XX has chosen that the soft tyre will be better, and so has name redacted, but I'm not sure that's the right decision with the current state of the weather conditions. With the time TX got left, he might not... I don't think he will have the time to come back out and set another lap time, so I think that's the best the Alpine driver can do already. And Edwin LFC, no, he's coming back out on the Inters, so bailed on his outlap, and came back in for the same tyre, just evidently valued the freshness of the tyre over sort of the track position and what time he would start the lap. But the final rounds of qualifying are pretty much upon us now. Tobias Gabri will be the first to start his final run, heading through that final Vale chicane now, and then it's around the last corner of Club, and he begins the first of his final run of qualifying. Taking us through that first sector to the left, and then under braking for the right-hander round the loop, and then back to the left. Back on the power again, round Aintree, and on to the Wellington Straight. Which brings him up to the end of that first sector, where he's 4 tenths up already on his personal best. And it's the flick to the right, round Luffield, and it gets back on the power for quite an important traction zone, as it's going to be flat out for an awfully long time. Obviously, I doubt he'll be able to take Cops flat out in the wet. It's not a full lift, but it is partially lifting off that throttle pedal, just taking it a little bit careful. It's committed through Magnussen Beckett to the right of Chapel, and it's back on the power again onto the hanger straight. And we see it's 9 tenths up now. The checkered flag has fallen. Woods did not make the line in time. So MP3, that's the best he's going to be able to do in this qualifying session. Piers Gabri heading in towards that final sector, 9 tenths up through those first 2. Just the question is how well he can do through this final sector and where he can put himself in the grand scheme of things. He goes into P5 with a 1.3 second improvement. We wait to see what Drive Behind can do. Name Redacted is heading up to the line on the soft tyre. Can't get himself into that top 10. Zuiada goes P1 with a 32.8, raising the bar even further above what it already was. MDM round the final corner now. 1.4 seconds up through the first 2. He can't go to pole. He's 6 tenths off the time set by Zuiadek in the kick Sauber. Finky next to the line. Goes wide at the end, but he keeps it within the limit. And it goes P6 with a 33.9. Blackberry next to the line. Goes into P5, 33.6. Then it's a Ferrari teammate. It's going to be the next to the line, which is Zeku, who's only 4 tenths up at the moment. That would be enough to stick him onto the front row. He can stick it on the pole, though, with a 7/10 improvement. And that seems to be a pole time, as Edwin could only manage P8, just slotting in just ahead of his teammate. It's Zeku on pole, followed by Zuiadek, and then MDM slotting in P3. But it does appear that we're going to be having a dry race. despite the wet qualifying, it is going to be dry for the race, which will open up a more conventional Grand Prix rather than the slight difference that we get in the wet. Here we go to 5 red lights, and it's lights out. And away we go, and Zeku does get a good start, and he is going to lead them into the first corner. Zuiadek on the inside, can't hold it there, and Zeku leads through the first corner, followed by Zuiadek. Wards moves up into P3 ahead of MDM, who didn't get the grace of starts. Blackberry on the inside now, let's go almost 3 wide in through that first sector. He does back out of it. MDM and Tiak going side by side now, round the loop and onto the Wellington straight for the first time. It's Zeku who leads, followed by Zuiadek, who's going to try and go for the move very early. He's going to go for it on the inside, into Brooklands. They're going side by side through the middle sector part of the racetrack. Now round Luffield, they're still there. He's still hanging on the outside, but he does end up having to concede the place. Here goes MS Wards, who's now on the inside of the Kicksauber, moves himself up ahead. Is he going to think about it into Cops? No, he doesn't. He does choose to back out, but Zeku goes a bit wide, and that invites him almost to go for the move. But there isn't an opportunity to do so. He thought about it, going side by side there. It's Blackberry and Phantom Fox through Maggots and Beckett, and B.S. Gabry almost stuck his nose up the inside there, and it was very close to disaster, but thankfully the pair managed to avoid making contact. Jack now pulls out on I just forgot how to speak. There's contact there with Blackberry, I think, making contact with Phantom Fox. The pair of them went off the racetrack through Stowe, but they thankfully avoided losing too much time relative to the other drivers. But Blackberry does fall down to 12th as he gets passed by Foles on the inside. Zeku leads from AMS Wards, then it's Tiak and Zuiadek behind them. But now DRS enabled at the start of lap 2. And AMS Wards is going to try and use this to his advantage onto the Wellington straight. And with the DRS advantage, the extra straight line speed that it provides, he's not close enough though to go for a move into Brooklands. The B1XX seems to be a little bit out of shape down the Wellington straight, possibly just lost out due to not having the DRS to the cars in front, and he's dropped down into 12th place behind Blackberry and Foles, who have ended up getting their way back past him. The biggest winner really on that opening lap was Foles, but Tiak. But here comes AMS Ward. He's going to go for the race lead and goes on the outside into Stowe and gets that move done. And now we'll see whether he can break away and open up a DRS window. Blackberry and P1XX going side by side through Stowe as the Ferrari does get himself back in front. It's the first lap of the race from AMS Wards, who's now just going to try and stretch out that advantage, but it's not very easy to do so at this circuit. Tiak's almost thinking about going for a move there. Zeku does go for a move on the inside through the loop, but he can't quite get himself up into the race lead. But he's going to think about it now. It's on board with him. Is he going to send it? He doesn't. He chooses to back out. Tiak does send it though. And on the inside, although he does pick up a 3-second time bounty, as they go side by side through Luffield still. And Zeku's going to hold on. But that sort of battling is what AMS Ward is going to want them to do, as it just helps him stretch out that lead in P1. Zuiadek and MDM going side by side as the Kicksauber gets himself back in front of the Aston Martin. The front 8 here are all in one big train at the moment, and so it will just be so interesting to see how this pans out, as all of them are in just touching distance with one another. If anyone makes the tiniest of mistakes, Zeku can't decide which way he's going to go, ends up not going any direction at all as he tries to get himself back past AMS Wards. But looking at it, I think the next lap will be his best opportunity to just sit back for a bit, regroup and go again. Name Redacted has retired from the session. That's through the Vale chicane. He's chosen to manually retire. He's not crashed the car. But Aku's going to think about going for a move here. Tiak's going to pull out, but he's not close enough to achieve too much. And they all hold to their stations down the Wellington Straight and into Brooklyn's Phantom Fox. Does get past Foles on the inside, but can't. And Foles can't do too much to fight that one back. The McLaren moves himself back up into 9th place. We've got almost the entire field just in one shot, really. It's from Pinky down in P8 down to Zaku. It's all so close. Zaku goes to the outside and moves up into the race lead down the Hangar Straight. And MS Woods is wise not to fight that one too much, because it would just cost more time than it's worth. The front 8, though, all within 2 seconds of one another. Just very, very close. The finest of margins could be the difference. Tiak makes a mistake through Club, but he's not going to lose out too much from that. He's going to hold his position. It's just a matter of time loss, but he will remain in that 1 second DRS window. MDM does send it on the inside off the kick-salver of Zuiadek, but as they go side by side through the loop, he can't fight that one back. And now, onto the Wellington Straight. He's making sure to not allow the kick-salver to do anything, but they still are going to go side by side into Brooklands. But MDM does hold on. He goes a bit deep, and that invites BS Gabri to get involved in the battle. He's now side by side with Zuiadek, but the kick-salver, I think, is just going to have enough. But Gabri does get a better run down the old pit straight, and I think he will move ahead. No, they're still going to be side by side, but the kick-salver does move himself ahead. Now the two Haas cars looking to go side by side. I think MS Waters has moved past Zaku as all of that was going on behind. And the Red Bull leads yet again, but the same story as last lap, because now Zaku's gaining again down the Hangar Straight, but I doubt he's going to be close enough. And behind them, Bing has moved up into P6, which is a big slide as he went through Stowe, and that could have just cost him the DRS, as he's 9 tenths behind, is going to be incredibly close. The gap is fluctuating around about a second, but I think he is just going to remain in that 1 second window. But MDM isn't, as he's 1.1 seconds behind. And now, the front 3 have a perfect opportunity to just run away and get themselves into 2 separated trains. It's down the Wellington Straight. You can see how much time he's losing to the cars in front of him. So it's just the lack of DRS can be the difference between staying in a fight and not. But as this front 3 just tried to pull away, Tiak with that 3-second time penalty has pretty much made it. So it's a battle between NMS Ward and Zaku, or at least for the time being, that's what it appears to be. Here they go. Zaku pulls to the outside, and he moves back up into the race lead. Ward doesn't fight it too much, just lets him go, and is probably wise in doing so. And Tiak's also on the soft tyres, so he's going to be doing a completely different strategy. It's a fast lap off the race from Zaku as he moved his way back up into the race lead. There's still no gains from Zuiadek. I'm receiving invites, please don't. Zuiadek moved, is just unable to gain back that 1.7 second window. He needs to gain 7 tenths if he wants to get himself back into that DRS train, and I doubt he's going to be able to, because he doesn't have the DRS, and MDM is going to go straight back past him into P4. They are gonna go. Like, this battle between Zuriadic and DM, I don't think will ever end as this race goes. So they're on the same strategy as well, and the two of them, they're just trading positions every single lap, usually multiple times a lap, as AMS Wards as well. Another battle that's been ongoing for the entire race. He moves himself up into the race lead, and Zaki doesn't bother fighting it too much, so he knows he will get back past on the next lap. Biet Gabri, though, has chosen to come into the pit lane early at the end of lap 9. So it's quite a way before the halfway mark of the end of lap 13. He chooses to come into the pit lane now. I think the game, if I remember correctly, the game offers lap 12 as the optimal pit stop. He's going to go onto the medium tyres right now. Same with Phantom Fox. Also going onto a set of the medium tyres, which they're going to hope can carry them for the entire rest of the race. Which is quite a decent distance away. But I think at this stage the race has sort of settled down. Everyone's in their respective battles with in the sort of same place that they have slowly filtered out to being in. I think Edwin's tyres just seem to have gone off quite significantly, as he's now fallen 2 seconds behind the drivers in front of them. Everything's going pretty well for these front two, as Zaku goes around the outside of AMS Wards. This time TX going to join the battle as well. They're desyncing between the two of them, and it's resulted in Tiak leading from AMS Woods, AMS Woods now fighting him, and he's going to go around the outside through the Vale chicane, moves himself ahead. Now Zeku's got involved. The front three all scrapping it out for position. It's now Tiak has to concede he was in the race lead for the span of about 10 seconds. He's now lost out to Zeku and Woods, who both have moved themselves back up ahead of him. Tiak's got to try something different, because he's on a different strategy already. Oh, he's getting a lot of wheel spin on the exit of the loop as they go onto that Wellington straight, and that's going to cost him a lot of momentum. And down the entire way off the straight, Blackbeard's opted for the hard tyres, which at this track is likely going to prove to be a mistake. There was a yellow flag through Sector 1, but I'm not totally sure who it was for. Zeku is practically pushing AMS Woods through this middle sector at the moment. They're going to snake their way through the S's. The Red Bull seems to be struggling a lot more than the Ferrari, and that seems to be pretty much proven as the Ferrari moves himself up into the race lead for yet another time. Zuyadek on the outside of MBM moves himself up into P4. The Aston Martin gets very wide. No, sorry, that's desync in the lobby. Into the pit lane comes Tiak. He's the first out of that lead pack of 3 to come into the pit lane, and he does so at the end of lap 11. And Tiak's coming for the medium compound, which is going to set him back, but he should still remain ahead of BS Gabri. If looking at it, he should comfortably be ahead. Although actually, it is a very long pit lane on the circuit, so as they come round into turn 1, it's going to be closer than it initially looked like, but he is quite comfortably ahead of BS Gabri. And now, we see, can he offset that 3-second time penalty by some very strong outlaps? And now it's just these front two, without the distraction of the driver behind, who did bear in mind have a penalty, so at least provisionally wouldn't have been affecting these two drivers with the end result. Obviously depends on how it plans out, whether the other drivers get time penalties. But Zeku's going to hold P1 this time around as Zuyadek moves ahead of MDM and up into P3, which is more of a net P4, as there is Tiak, who has come into the pit lane. MDM have chosen that now is the time to come into the pit lane. He's coming off the medium tyre onto the softs before the half race distance. He's going to do a longer stint on the softs than what he did on the medium. No, he's going to go for the hards. He's not going to go for the softs. He's going to go for the hards, and I think he's going to struggle on that tyre. I really do think MDM will struggle on that hard compound. It's not a good tyre at this circuit. So, MDM is in a position where he's behind PS Gabri as well. He's behind Tiak by quite a way. And he's on a tyre that's most likely going to be slower. The front two are still setting very respectable lap times here compared to what they had before. The drop-off at this track is not especially significant. There's a 105.5 from Zeku, which is solid pace for a medium tyre stint. So they're going to have to come into the pit lane soon, but the question is when they choose to do so. Everyone in the top 4 choosing to stay out for at least one more lap. Tiak's on a 105.0 in that middle sector, so he's lapping about 0.5 a lap faster than these lead drivers, which may not seem like tremendously much, but after the few laps that he's going to be out for, he should end up quite a way in front of them when they come into the pit lane. And then the question is, how much can they gain with the tyre advantage, and whether they can get within that 3-second window. The race certainly has settled itself down at this stage. It's more just a waiting game at this stage. Of the gap from Tiak to the leaders being only 24 seconds, I think he will come out quite comfortably ahead of them. But whether he'll be able to stay there to the end of the race is another question. AMS Wards chooses that now, at the end of lap 14, he's going to come into the pit lane and will most likely be for the soft compound tyre. And indeed, he does choose that now is the time to go onto the soft tyre. Zaku's going to need to pull out the greatest outlap, or greatest in-lap that he can to try and keep himself close to the lead Red Bull. You can see in the background, here comes Tiak with a 29.2 as they're going to come around into turn 1, and he is going to take the net race lead, but with Gabby right behind him, I doubt he's going to stay there. But Wards is still very, very close behind them, and he's still within their DRS range, so nothing is over just yet. It's absolutely not over. AMS Wards is on the faster compound and doesn't have a time bounty and is still right behind Tiak and BS Gabri. And he's so much quicker that he may even think about going for a move already into Gob's corner. He's not feeling that bold at this stage. He may have to resort to similar overtakes if he gets stuck behind. And Zaku does come into the pit lane. Oh, he's sped! He's sped in the pit lane and he's thrown away what could have been a really strong result. He's picked up a 10-second time penalty, and now he's not really going to be able to keep with AMS Wards, who moves up past BS Gabri and is now in the net race lead. He doesn't go for the move on P1XX just yet. There's a bit of contact between the two of them. The new softs are so much faster, and he gets a brilliant slingshot and moves past the Mercedes driver with total ease down the pit straight. And you can see where Zagu's coming out. He's still very much in this fight, but or at least on the road he is, but with that 10-second time penalty, he's not going to be able to finish in this position. He's going to just lose out so much. So he's got to drop back 10 seconds to versus where he finishes. There's a yellow flag as there's someone who's gone off the track, which appears to be the Aston Martin of MDM, as Foles and Edwin getting pretty close to each other. Same with Pinky and Zuriadek on the road. But neither are doing too much in terms of battling. Most just choosing to prioritise just keeping the car on the road, not letting their rivals get too close behind them, because that can be a big hit if you do so. But Zagu's going to go for it on BS Gabri. That's an opportunistic move, but he's made it work as AMS Wards moves past Tiak into the lead of the race on the track. He was already in the net race lead, but now he's there on the road as well. .7 is the lap from AMS Wards. It's a very fast lap, especially relative to what he'd been doing before, and it just sets up the sort of tone that we're going to be seeing from him. As I think his goal is going to be run away if he can, and don't risk anything, because the two drivers behind him have those time penalties as well. Zuriadic has moved back past Pinky into P5, but otherwise there's not tremendous amounts happening on the track, because all the gaps are decently large. There's a couple of trains of 2 or 3 people, but that's about it. But we have got restored that original train from the start of the race. AMS Ward's leads from Zeku, and then it's Tiak, but who is on the medium tyre with that 3-second time penalty. And then Zeku, of course, has that 10-second, which will cost him a lot as well. There's only 9 laps to go at the end of this one, so we are definitely approaching the end stages of the Grand Prix. But certain levels seem to have been pretty much already done, because Zeku's not going to be able really to win unless we see a safety car or a good opportunity for him to pit and serve that 10-second penalty. I doubt we'll see him fighting too much at the front of the field. And TX made some form of mistake in the last few laps, and he's completely fallen off compared to Wards and Zeku, who, as Zeku does move himself up into the race lead. But TX now fallen back into this second train, as he's lost 3 seconds to the drivers in front of him. I'm not sure if he's just paced his head a cliff or if he's just made a mistake, but he's just sliding around all over the place. He really seems to be struggling. It's a 1:30.4, which is not that great of a lap time compared to what the other drivers are doing. And now he's just in a tough place. There's not tremendously much he can do, and he's going to be completely swamped into this DRS train, where he's going to finish, probably, at the moment, he's going to finish in P7. That gap from the front train to the back, or to the second train, is now 3.7 seconds. But with the 10-second time penalty at the moment, Zeku will finish all the way down in P7. But if these two just work together and just run away, maybe they can create a 10-second gap. Especially if the drivers behind them keep fighting, as Pinky goes past Tiag, whose tyre seems to have just completely died. I'm not sure what's happened to the Alpine, but he's having to tug in behind Pinky now, and he's down to P5, when he was previously fighting for that race win. Foles now gets past Tiag, and something has happened to the pace of the Alpine. Possibly it's just the fact that he's on the medium tyre, and he was never particularly quick, it's just he kept with the DRS. I'm not sure, but he's struggling badly. And he's dropping through the field like a stone. So MS Ward does move past Deku, who doesn't really need to. He is still in the net race lead, pretty much regardless of what he does here. As Pinky moves past Uriodic into P3 for a move that makes a bit more difference, as there isn't penalties affecting those two. But who knows, there may be by the end of the race. But AMS Wards will need a 6-second time penalty, really, if he wants to be affected by time penalties in this race, because at the moment he's in the lead. The driver right behind him has a 10-second penalty. Oh, there's a bit of contact between the two of them. Zeki just went a tiny bit deep and hit the back of the Red Bull. But there's not too much affected by their contact. But AMS Wards has just really got this race under control from here. I don't really see a way in which he loses this race win, but that being said, I may have just given him the commentator's curse. P1XX goes past Blackberry into P11. You can see what I said about NDM being on the hard tyres. He's 12 seconds behind that group that he was in before, now that he's put on the hard compound. It's really not the tyre to use, and I think he's learnt that the hard way here. As Deku and Amos Ward's traded position, so did Zuiadek and Pinky. But I think for most of these drivers it's just going to be manage the tyres and save for the last lap when they can attack and actually make up positions. Because if you attack now, you're just going to be re-overtaken on the next lap. P1XX gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings, as he's trailing Blackberry at the moment. Yeah, I mean, the race really hasn't gone the way for either of them, sitting in 11th and 12th, both 6 seconds behind the next car ahead of them. There's not too long left in the race now. I think it is, like at this stage, it is just a race of management. But the main thing we're going to be waiting for is that final lap where we see what the approach will be from the drivers, when they're going to attack, and how quickly they're going to try and make their way through the DRS train. Because there's this main train here. There's hardly a train anymore. It's 3 drivers who are all within DRS of one another. TX completely dropped off the back of it. He's just really seems to have hit just a wall with his pace. There's a yellow flag, but I'm not sure who's caused that one. But either way, I mean, there's not too much that's gonna change. But Azeku's got a 3-second time penalty, which is probably gonna cost him. Although actually looking at it, no, it won't. Compared to, he's already ahead of Tiak. He's still ahead of Tiak, and he's not gonna be affected by Edwin. Hazuiodic does move back past Pinky. And they're going to be side by side with Foles on the outside as well. Going to swoop his way around if he can as they go onto the main straight, the Hamilton straight. And just on the outside, the Mercedes driver is going to try and hang in. There's still a little bit more wheel banging, but the Mercedes, I think, has got himself up into P4. Does he? No, he's not. He's been pushed wide. He's picked up a 3-second time penalty for it, which is not what you want in a train. And he's going to, I think he's going to have to concede the place as well. So he does end up being behind Pinky, who now already just wants to gain back again on Zuiadek, who he lost quite a lot of time to with all of that. With 2 full laps to go, 2.5 laps really, at the moment, as MS Woods has just gone past Zeku through the middle sector. It's quite an opportunistic move really, but he's made it work and fair play to him. Foles is going to go on the inside of Pinky. He's going to get that move done. He moves up into 4th place. This time, will actually stay there. But now he's got that 3-second time penalty. His hopes of 3rd place. Sorry, his hopes of 4th place. No, hopes of 2nd place. There we go. Are pretty much over. Yeah, on the final. Oh, sorry, on the penultimate lap now. With Wards leading, followed by Zeku. And the gap's opened up to over a second now, but it's not going to be affecting either of them too much. They're not going to gain or lose anything from staying in the other's DRS. And Zuiadek is just holding on ahead. Zeku in the end might just about get 6th. Might just about get 5th if he can pull out maybe a 2nd on Gabri in the next lap, a lap and a half. But he had the pace for the win. It's just he made 2 crucial mistakes to get 2 crucial time penalties, or possibly he made 3 mistakes to get that track limits penalty. Plus the mistake that caused him to speed in the pit lane. It's not ideal for him at all, and it's gonna cost him the chance to fight for victory. If we're going to go on to the final lap, as we head through the final sector at the moment. And now round the final corner, AMS Woods does begin the final lap of the Grand Prix, which he has pretty much controlled. And he kept his car there or thereabouts through the first stint, trading position with Zeku. But then as soon as the Ferrari came into the pit lane, it was pretty much over. So he picked up that 10-second time penalty, and all Wards really needs to do is just keep it there or thereabouts, close enough. It's ended up that he's going to take it on the road as well. But it's going to be more interesting behind though, that the drivers are going to start to deploy all they've got left. But I don't think it's going to affect too much, because Pinky is not going to be able to affect Zuiadek. And Foles won't either with that 3-second time penalty, so I don't think it's going to end up being tremendously interesting. But Zeku has now got that margin that he will finish ahead of BS Gabri, even with the time penalties that will inevitably be applied. So MDM has moved himself ahead of Edwin, despite being on that hard compound. Tiak has got another 3-second time penalty, which I believe is his 6th, possibly his 9th. Yeah, it's his 6-second time penalty. So they go around the final corner. It is going to be AMS Woods who wins in Silverstone. Zeku comes home P2, but he's going to fall quite a way down. Zuiadek's going to come home to take 2nd place. Then it's going to be Pinky in P3, Foles in P4. Zeku's going to get P5 in the end. And then BS Gabri gets P6. MDM's going to come home P7 on the road, so you're going to fall to P8. And then Tiak is going to come P9. And then Phantom Fox is going to come home P10, followed by Blackberry and P1XX having quite a miserable race out there. And he's going to finish in P12. The game's retired. He actually left the session, but P1XX is going to come home P10, I think that was, or P11, but game says P10, but he was P11 because of the retirement of Tiak in front of him. It's MS Ward who wins in Silverstone, followed by Zooey Arctic P2, Pinky P3, Foles P4, then it's Zeiku who was just so quick throughout the race, but he made that mistake. Then it's BS Gabri, Edwin, MDM, Phantom Fox, P1XX, Blackberry, and Tiak, and then Name Redacted retiring early on in the session. Thank you for watching the stream, and we will see you. I think we'll see you next week. Honestly, I don't really know. I probably won't be there. Yeah, thank you for watching.